Glenn, do you want to know what I hate?
No. And that's why you should never open with a question.
If you enjoy The Fix and want to get access to even more good stuff, join the Fix Accelerator today. Get access to special masterclasses from Nick and me, watch expert interviews with industry legends, join live copy feedback sessions every week, and get connected to our very own private copy network. Visit thefixaccelerator.com for more information.
What I hate is people pitching me things apologetically. I don't mind being sold things because, in fact, I love buying things. I love buying things. I'm a real consumer. There's so many like podcasts I listen to where I think, oh, I bought the sunglasses that such and such mentioned there, and I bought the book that I love buying things. I quite like being sold to in my own way, but I hate it when somebody pitches me something in a sort of, oh, I'm really sorry to take up any of your time. And you probably don't have time to worry about this, and then they tell you the thing, and then at the end they sign off to say, "Oh, if you don't have any time to respond, don't worry about reply." Actually, forget I even sent you this message. I hate that, but I think it's actually way more common than people realize, because I think it's a symptom of the dreaded imposter syndrome.
I agree, and I immediately, two things are in my mind. Number one is what podcast you're listening to, whereby the natural call to action is to buy sunglasses. I couldn't square those.
Do you want to know?
Yeah.
The Move, Lance Armstrong's cycling podcast, which is great. He advertises his own products, all of which are endurance sport junkie, have endurance sport junkies like ourselves.
Really telescopic sunglasses.
Yeah, they're full of the...
Anyway, so that was the first thing. The second thing is, when you was just talking about there, I think a lot of people, and I think it probably why this curse, this disease of apologetic pitching and imposter syndrome continues and has done for decades, if not centuries, if not millennia. I think it's because people think, oh no, it can't be that bad. People don't get hurt by it on the other end of the email. Like if you say no worries and like don't, but they're not thinking that much. And maybe explicitly they're not thinking that, but deep down, nobody likes to read that, even on an unconscious level. When if you give people a way out, the natural human emotion, natural human behavior is to take that way out as easily and as quickly as possible. So if you say you don't need to reply to this, if you say you don't need to bother about this, if I don't need to do something, I'm just like, nice one. Delete that email from my inbox. It is one less stress to worry about. It's a subconscious thing that is happening. So it really does make a big, big, big difference. And I've seen that in countless job situations where I've been the employer, where I've seen employers react like that. But also fundamentally deep down, you know in yourself, if someone gives you a way out, you'll take it because it's just the way we operate in life.
That's true. So today, that's what we're going to talk about. So we're calling this episode Pitch Your Way Through Imposter Syndrome. So this is effectively a follow-up episode to last week's. So if you haven't seen last week's episode, which was How's to Write a Cold email pitch, you don't have to, but I'd recommend going back and...
No, don't apologize, Nick. You have to watch that. Not watching this.
People's time is their own, but this is a companion piece, this is a follow-up, because we got a lot of feedback on last week's episode, and this came up a lot, that the concept of imposter syndrome. And it kind of makes sense, because if you think about it, who's writing predominantly speaking, who is writing completely cold email pitches? People with relatively limited experience or a relatively limited network. In general, that will be the case. I know that there are other people that use cold email, but those are in our space. It's going to be people starting out who don't know a lot of people and haven't maybe done a lot of copywriting yet, so they're trying to find their way in. Those people will have a proclivity towards displaying imposter syndrome. So we wanted to talk about ways around that. Now, the first thing to recognize is that you cannot eliminate imposter syndrome. Everybody gets it. It's a natural state. We all get it. I know people who are really, really, really successful who still have those moments who think, oh, can I actually do this? So we can't eliminate imposter syndrome, but we can sort of manage the symptoms of it and make sure that it doesn't hold you back in your career. And that's what we want to talk about. Because that's what makes people apologize for pitching. It's what makes you pitch in a way that's sort of on the back foot and is effectively a way, it's a thing that leads to a weak pitch because you don't feel like there's any value to what you have to offer because you're feeling like an imposter. So what do you do in that situation? Well, there's a few things that we sort of brainstormed, but I guess the overarching thing is, like we said last week, you have to apply the basic principles of copywriting to what you're selling, which in this case is yourself. So you could never sell a product, somebody else's product, whether it was a supplement, information product, coaching, whatever. If you thought that product was crap, you couldn't sell it well. You'd have to be incredibly cynical or probably a sort of psychopath. On most levels, to sell something, you have to authentically feel like it offers value to your prospect. And the same is true for your services. So you have to find a way of figuring out how to think about that.
Your phrasing of it then, Nick, was right. You have to find a way. You have to find what it is. Because as a copywriter, I've written for things that I don't use, but I found the way that I can be convinced that should I be of that mindset, should I be in that space, I would use that product over others because this one has this unique element to it. So you have to find what is good about that thing. And I think that does analogically work with, analogically isn't a word, but fine. It does work with your pitching. You might not feel like you've done much to celebrate, or if you're right at the start of your career or kind of thing, but we have to find a way that you can find something in yourself that you can celebrate, that you are good at, and that does evidence your skill set that you are trying to tell people about. Because the alternative, and you touched on the fact that you'll come across weak and apologetic if you do this, but the instinct, unfortunately, when people aren't confident in what their own abilities, is to actually go the other way, is perhaps the most negative way of dealing with it, and start talking nonsense and claiming things they don't do and don't know about and haven't really done or understand fully. And that's even more dangerous than being apologetic. That's hyperbole, that's bullshitting, that's like already going to put so many problems into your future career. So we need to find a way to be confident about what you actually authentically have as a skill.
So we're going to talk about that, but I guess we're setting ourselves in opposition to a certain sort of person that's out there, the sort of fake it until you make it merchant. So there are plenty of people out there who say the way past this is to lie, dress up your experiences, puff your chest out, over promise, to lie, to bullshit, to fake it. Those people don't listen to them. They're not giving you good advice. Okay, they're liars. Okay, it's not the way any serious business person would want to conduct themselves. So let's think about it like this. We want to build strong relationships with our clients, relationships that could be worth 6 figures and more to us. Okay, we do not want those relationships to be built on a sort of foundation of lies. It's a terrible idea. So you don't want to just lie. And most good people know this. Good in the sort of moral sense. They know that they shouldn't lie, particularly about themselves. But then I think that leads back to apologizing. Well, I'm not prepared to do that. So I'm sorry. Could you do me a favor? So you got to get around it somehow. So how do you do that? How do you sell yourself on yourself? Well, as with most things in copywriting, one of the answers is to be really specific. So my first piece of advice is stop focusing on the things you don't have, i.e. experience in this case. That's almost like writing a pitch for a product and saying, I'm going to talk about all the things it can't do. Now that might well be a valid way of writing some pitches, but you wouldn't necessarily start there, would you? Let's talk about all of the ways in which this is deficient. You'd probably only do that if the upside was so big that you could make play with that. Problem is that
Forward to Fix Fest 500, so tired, just going, right, today I'm going to talk about the deficiency principle. We've run out of ideas, so we're going to sell things based on what doesn't exist.
well, we're going to let other people. We're not doing Fix Fest next year. We're going to let the rest of the market respond to our moves, and we will return at some point in the future to shake things up again. So don't focus on what you haven't got. What do you have is the first question. So, like, what is your experience? So we were talking to somebody on Discord, you know, he's starting out in the copywriting world, wants to get into, say, I think it's a medical market of some sort. Okay, that's what he wants to be. What's his background? How do we sort of three-dimensionalize that person? You know, because we're not just copywriters, are we? We have other things in our lives. So we talked last week, Glenn, you know, I might talk about interest in endurance sports, or you might talk about your experience writing fiction, for instance, or in the council, or other things that we've done on the side, other little. What are the things that make us us? What are our interests? What's our experience? Now, some people are just starting out from school. I'm going to come back to that in a second. But for the person that isn't doing those, maybe making a career change, how do you mine that? Because on one level, what do you want your prospect to think of you? You want to cut through and have them establish a clear identity for who you are in your head. And maybe the way of doing that is to talk about experiences that you've had that other people haven't. So that's the first thing I would do. And Glenn, that's something that people almost want to apologize for their own experience. Like, oh, I've spent the last 10 years in local government. I don't know anything about copywriting. It's like, okay, what do you say?
Well, when you said it, I thought, like, I went for a job interview with Agora to be a copywriter. I didn't even know what copywriting was. And that's not hyperbolic. I had no idea that existed and was even a thing. I didn't know what it meant. I certainly didn't know what financial publishing was. I didn't know what investments were about, really. However, I'd been a financial auditor. I'd audited financial systems in the council. I'd done businesses and whatever. But I was probably, I mean, it's too long ago for me to remember now, but I would be able to go, all right, financial, what do I know that is relevant to this? Oh, well, I've done loans and investments, and I'd seen it was around the time of the financial crisis and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of knew all of that from that, which obviously helped me and made that thing. I do the same now with any copy job, where if someone comes to me and goes, we want to sell X, and I've got no experience of X, I'll go, right, where do I have experience of X? Like, what is it like similar to that? Oh, right. Well, actually, I don't know that, but I do know this. And it's that instinct to just go, what is relevant? It reminds me, it's banal, but it reminds me of what my mum used to do, where we'd literally prepare for job interviews by looking for these points and go, okay, right, well, what have you done? You did extracurricular activity working for the youth club. Like, that shows, that evidences this ability, not in the same way, not specifically to what you'll be doing, but it evidences the ability. I'm good at events organizing. Like, I could go and become an events organizer today, because I've done all of these things, and go, well, I've never actually put on a mute. I have, but you know what I mean. But if I was saying, oh, if I went to work for Eventim, is that a company that does events, and says, oh, I'd like to be like a manager of the Wembley events thing, they'd go, you're a copywriter, what are you talking about?
I'd like to be a manager of Wembley, please. It's here again. What should we do?
So what's all about? And I go, well, actually, I've put on gigs all my life. I've organized this. I've corralled these people to do this. I've done all this thing. I could put together a great case for something I've never on paper actually done before by looking for things that I've done in my actual life and as an actual person, which is kind of the point that you wanted to raise, Nick, the idea that we are all real people. We've all got experiences. It just might not be in copywriting.
So you have to mine those experiences, and you have to look yourself in the mirror, really. So like, that is a great example you just gave there, Glenn. Like, neither of us are events. In fact, we're two of the worst events managers you could ever imagine. For people that have put some fairly big events on, we're lucky we have grown-ups who, well, actually, you're one of the grown-ups, I guess. But between us, we get it done. But you wouldn't go and say, oh, I've never really done any of that. So, well, you don't want to focus on the lack. You want to focus on the thing that makes you different. So for reasons I still don't understand, the last 2 years I've organized and hosted the biggest copywriting event in Britain, whatever. I don't know if that's true, but like some version of that is a way in to talking about, it doesn't even have to be about events, about organization or about risk taking. That's another one. If you've worked for a business run, you know, a for-profit business, for instance, you know, if you've been entrepreneurial in some sense, lots of the people I've hired had no copywriting experience, but one guy I hired once, it's like he'd opened his own barber's shop. And it's like, why did you do that? Did you want to be a barber? He's like, no, I didn't want to be a barber, but I figured out that you could get really cheap commercial scene. You get access to cheap hair. And it was the hair I was interested in. No, he found out you could get a good commercial space on a high street. Something. He was like, well, what could I put in that? What could I put in that space that would make money? And so and it was a really interesting story. Now, he didn't actually display any copywriting credentials, but it showed endeavor and it showed entrepreneurial spirit, and it three-dimensionalized him as, oh, that guy. Yeah. It made him different to other people. So if you can't offer any, you know, great relevant experience, offer something that makes you stand out. That's what copywriting is there to do. What's your point of difference? Because frankly, there's probably going to be a copywriter out there with better credentials than you. So how do you make yourself different to them?
Warning. I'm now flashing forward to like people sending strange gimmicky things. Making yourself, finding out what becoming a point of difference to people does not mean being gimmicky. It has to come from an authentic place about your own experience. Just I don't want to ever advise anyone to send a toilet seat in for a job interview, which someone once did to me. It's like, yeah, very clever, but no thanks. I'm not bothered about that. People used to advise doing that kind of stuff. I'm not a fan personally. I think it's kind of bollocks.
Well, if you do that, what you're really saying is, I'm somebody who likes gimmicks in marketing. Yeah. There are businesses that love that. Yeah. Most of them aren't necessarily going to be great businesses because, again, a business that's built on gimmickry can't really have a very deep relationship.
Yeah.
Okay. But so, for instance, to the right audience, maybe that would work because if that audience, that prospect has shown themselves to be interested in that sort of thing, maybe you could do that. But I agree, there's going to be better ways of doing it. But it's about being honest and really interrogating your own experiences and what they.
Do you know what it is? It's worth just kind of in our own kind of fumbling around in the dark for the right way of phrasing it. You need to find out what makes you and what separates you from things, but don't think it has to be not special, but don't think it has to be like a unique, weird thing. it can be quite banal. It can be, oh, I've done this. I worked at the local youth club and I've supported kids. And you go, that would be, oh, all right. It's not very exciting, but it evidences your ability to engage with people, walk through things. You might be the best customer service manager ever because of that skill. It doesn't need to be like extraordinary or audacious in any way. It doesn't need to be a weird thing in a USP way. It just needs to be unique to you and evidence that thing. So just be aware of that when you think. I don't want to misadvise people. Think, all right, okay, well, I did want to climb the Eiffel Tower, and it's like, no, that's not kind of relevant. It's the thing that is relevant to the skill, and only you have done. Everybody else might do it too, but
yeah, what can you say about yourself that nobody else is likely to say about them? I mean, it could be something. It could be something bad. I once hired a guy, and I mean, he was a great copywriter actually, but I remember his pitch was like, I just got kicked out of the army, and I'm figuring out what I want to do next. It was that, like, it was so simple. Like, and then he started talking about his love for copywriting, and like, but it just, he's a Greek guy. Yeah, we hired him. He's great. I loved working with him. Absolutely crazy, but great. But like, that was a differentiator, right? Like the guy that got kicked out. It just added something to the pitch rather than being like, I've always loved copywriting. And now, like, you see the difference between the two, right? It could be you had suffered some tragedy in your family when you were young and you've had to work your whole life and you never really got a chance to choose your career when you were 16 because it's gone. It could be anything. It's your story. So you can't don't focus on the absence, focus on the opposite of an absence. What do you have to say? What can you use? The presence. Yes. So I think that's something that people don't do, and we've encouraged them to do on the Discord. What did you used to do? You used to be a teacher, right? Well, why is that relevant to copywriting? And another of our academy, actually he's moved on with the academy now, hasn't he? Because he got a job. He worked on the trains, so he was telling the story about how that job had led him to this job. So you are you, okay? Don't focus on what you can't do, focus on what you can do. So there's that, okay? That's the first point. The second thing I'd say is, especially if you're in the early part of your career, and this does depend on who you're pitching, but be honest about the fact you don't have any experience. Now, I think if you're pitching on Upwork, for instance, which I've never done, somebody posting a job on Upwork probably isn't looking to mentor someone and find the next copywriting genius, right? This might not work out. But there are loads of industries where people are actively looking for their next protege, the person they can mentor, the sort of diamond in the rough they can find, the person they can bring through, train up. People are actively looking for that person. So sometimes what imposter syndrome makes people do is over egg their experience so that they seem way more established than they are, and they completely and eliminate any chance of getting mentored. Now, you get this all the time on LinkedIn, actually, where I do anyway. People will connect with you and you're seeing their job title, like something like agency owner at such and such. And then they message you saying, have you got any advice about how I can get some jobs? I'm trying to break into the world of advertising. This happened to me this week, okay? It happens all the time. And you're like, why are you presenting yourself as an agency owner? Because you've immediately I classified you as what you said you were, an agency owner, not somebody looking for work, not somebody looking for mentorship, not somebody looking for training, which is exactly what you are and what you want. So why would you be honest about that? You've classified yourself in your attempt to fake it until you make it. You've completely excluded yourself from all of those opportunities. So sometimes nobody has ever written to me and said, would you train me? No, maybe that's because I'm a horrible person. But
no, I disagree. Someone has done that, and we continue to do that for them.
I suppose but on a cold, like on LinkedIn, things like that, people are always faking it. That doesn't work.
Well, no one. I mean, this speaks to a deeper point, and I don't want to labor it, but I think it's worth just raising it so that anybody listening does know that we know. Nobody wants to admit that they don't know stuff in the copywriting world. Like, everybody's mid-weight copywriter. Everybody knows how it works, don't they? Everybody knows it all. And it's like, no, you don't. I don't know it all, and I've been doing it for 20 years. You don't know it all, and you've been doing it for however long. No one ever knows. It's a constantly evolving thing anyway. But also, I would never profess to know everything. But my word, I know a damn sight more than some of the people who are just, no, I don't need any help. I don't need any training. I don't need any support. I don't need any advice. We need to get rid of this part of the whole ecosystem of copywriting is long-term weaker for that arrogance. And that's when I would advise being confident when it comes to pitching, but the arrogance of going, no, I don't need to know that I'm at this level already. I'm at this level. It's going to screw you up. It screws the industry up because it makes people outside of copywriting think, oh, well, that's what that level of copywriter is or whatever. It just, on so many levels, it screws things up. And we all need to just take a step back and go, yeah, I don't quite know how that works. Like, how does that work?
Actually, if somebody, I think that's a great pitching tool. So let's say when you've got some relevant experience, by saying, oh, I've worked on this and this, but I was reading something that you did the other day, and I really don't know how you've done that. I'd love to learn how you went about writing that, for instance. Now that shows genuine openness, inquisitivity, endeavor, and it's honest. It starts to form a relationship that's on a more honest ground. I think you've got something to teach me. I'd love to work with you. I've done this and this, but right now I'm trying to work out how I get to work with you. Now that's a far more interesting pitch to me than somebody telling me that I've worked with 400 brands and I've doubled their ROI. Have you? Why are you writing to me then? Because if that was true, you wouldn't need me. You're pitching me for work. So you're lying on some level. Like, whether that's true or not, that's how I process those things. So I think actually being honest about what you lack. So the first part of this conversation was about, don't focus too much about what you don't have in terms of credentials. You actually might want to take the reverse approach when you're talking about your knowledge. What would you like to know? What don't you know yet? What would you like to learn from working in this job? So you're trying to bring both of these things to play. You're trying to be more honest about who you are, and you're trying to be more honest about why it is that you want that job, what you do offer, what you can't offer. So you want to think about that. And frankly, if you're starting out, sometimes asking people to give you a chance. I don't have any experience at all, but I'm prepared to learn. I'd like to do, you might need to show that in some way. And if you're looking for somebody who'll X, Y, and Z, then I could be you got, I'll give you an example of somebody blowing their chances of this up. From the financial world, somebody had written to another copy chief and said, they've done all the right things. I'd love to come and work with you. They clearly knew their stuff on some way, but they've made the fatal error at the end of lying about their experience. They'd said, I was trained by me. They referenced me. So I was trained by Nick O'Connor. And so the person they were pitching wrote to me because we happened to know each other. He said, do you know this guy? He said he's trained by you. And what it was he'd come on a 1 week course that he'd run to try and recruit people, which was not what I would call being trained by someone. If they'd said I spent 1 week with him and then I didn't get the job at the end of it, then that would have been fine. But because he lied, he tried to overamp that experience. If he'd said, so he ended up not getting the job because the guy was like, well, he's kind of lied about that. And I verified it really quickly, and I just don't like the way this smells, frankly. But if that person had said, look, I spent a week in the London offices working with the Agora guys, I absolutely loved it. I wish I'd got that job, but I didn't. And it's instilled me with this desire to find my way into your business one way or the other. I think he would have got that job. I think if he'd been honest about his experience and really just presented himself in the right way without over-egging it, without lying, he would have got that job, and he didn't. So
I did almost the same thing where I said I'd slept with Nick, and they assumed I was your husband, and they were like, "Oh, right, we'll employ Nick's husband." And we'd not slept together in that sense. We'd just shared a
We should have had many times.
I'd over-egged it, and I paid the price.
Ironically, it's your constant over-egging, which is why we haven't maybe taken that next step whilst sleeping in the same bed together. Technique I would use, which is kind of connected to what we talked about. Push people away to pull them in. So don't try and present yourself as all things to all people. Again, a lot of this just comes down to honesty and authenticity. Tell them what you're not right for. So for instance, I would be terrible at a job where I just had to follow orders. You have to do this way, in this style. That's the job. I think I'd say, if that's what you want me to do, you should run a million miles away from me, because I'll be terrible at that. Or proofreading, or whatever, all of my weaknesses, like lay them out, because that allows me a sort of more authentic way to say, but if you're looking for, a gobby northerner who swears too much and's got an that thinks too highly of himself, you won't find anyone better than me at that. So like pushing them away and say, here are the reasons you shouldn't hire me, and here are my deficiencies, and then countering with one strong claim to why you're the best at that role, or in these circumstances could be the best. I think that powers your pitch up, and that allows you to, if you've got to get some of your negativity out, I suppose it allows you a way of saying, if you're looking for somebody with 5 years experience, who's already jaded by the job, who thinks they know it all, who, has probably failed at several places already, and that's why they're asking you for a job, then that's not me, because I don't have that level of experience. I'm actually a completely different part of my career. But for that, and then you could start to say, so you could actually use the weak, that's turning a lack of experience into a strength by pushing them away and then pulling them back towards you. So there are things that you can do, but I think they all require you to be sort of honest, authentic, and to sort of address that imposter syndrome head on, rather than sort of apologizing for yourself.
Yeah. And I was just thinking, then it goes back, it's a loop, this one, where we go back to what we said at the beginning, about finding why do you want that job? Why do you, what is it about you that, I know it's a cliche thing, but like, where's your passion for this? What's actually driving you? Why are you bothering to pitch these people? There must be something in there. There must be something there. However, if you can't answer that, if you're really struggling to find that out, I'm not your counselor, but you probably need to figure out, well, why not? So why are you trying to get this job as a copywriter? Why are you trying to do that? Don't get me wrong. It might be that the answers are there, and you just, for some reason, something's blocking you from figuring it out. But if not, then maybe there's something else. Maybe you're not meant to be the copywriter. Maybe you're a marketer. Maybe you're a production thing. Maybe you're a design person. What's going on? You need to go look at yourself before you can pitch other people. You need to be able to pitch yourself to yourself before you can pitch other people. I think Ring Paul might have a smarter way of saying that, involving loving yourself, or something like that. But that's what you do need to do. It sounds a little bit waffy and a little bit kind of.
Well, no, it's not.
I think what you've got to do.
This is a double loop back now, because we're coming right back to the beginning. Again, if you were selling somebody else's product and we were reviewing your piece of copy and we asked you, why should somebody buy this? And you weren't able to answer that question, we'd say, you're not ready to write this pitch yet. You need to go figure it out.
Yeah.
It's perfectly reasonable. So sometimes it's an expression thing, but if you cannot offer, even to yourself, a single good reason why you should be hired for this job, why on earth would you expect somebody else to sort of piece it together? So your apology, and that's mean, but this is the job. This is the job of copywriting. It just so happens that this piece of copywriting involves selling your own skills, which is the hardest.
It would be mean to say, you don't have the answer now, get lost. We're not being mean. What we're really saying is, you're not ready to write that copy yet. You just need to do a bit more research. That's the ultimate.
Go
away, figuring out what the research is. Go, right, why am I good? Oh, it's because I've navigated the planet 8 times, and understand everything, but I should probably mention that. Like, that's your lead kind of thing, where you need to do the research.
And just as a final sign off, just to add a triple loop in, if you've reached the end of this episode and you're tempted to write us an email, as we always get some feedback on every episode that we do, if you're tempted to write to me and say, that's all very well and good you saying that, Nick, but I've got no experience in the world of copy and da. If that's how you're feeling, there's a really simple thing you can do. Scroll back to the start of the episode and watch it again and listen carefully to the things that we just said, and keep doing that. You could get stuck in an endless loop here, but everything, all of the answers that you need, we just talked about. Those are the questions and those are the issues that you need to, the questions you need to answer.
Words like proclivity. You'll hear words like, what else did you say? That was a wonderful word. It was made up. Inquisitosity or something like that. There's a lot of beautiful making. But yeah, I mean, even if you have got the point, watch it again just for the joyous words.
Stop anybody getting themselves stuck in a time loop. If this is your 10th time watching it and you just keep going, have a break, go to bed, come back, do it again. Anyway, you've got to go head on at the challenge. You can't expect somebody else to solve it for you. If you feel like you've still got that void of credibility and authenticity, keep working away at it. Figure out what you can say that nobody else can say. That will be your way through. As always,
copywriter in a vest telling you differently.
Yeah.
Red flag, people. Red flag. This is the only way. This is the way, as the Mandalorian would say.
And by the way, you can always send us your cold pitch. We've started reviewing a lot of these pitches on our Friday calls for the with the accelerator, so you can always join the accelerator if you like, or just send us your cold pitch and we'll review it for you. I mean, I said to Glenn before we came on air that it's kind of the most important feedback we can give people, which is like, how do we improve your pitch that actually gets you work? Now, obviously, you need to do the work in the end. How do you get that pitch right? We're happy to look at the copy. Anyway, we will see you next week when we won't be talking about cold pitching. In fact, I think we're going to do a Black Friday special next week. And between now and then, I'm going to figure out what I mean by that. But check in next week. Bye.
Oh, I love Black Friday. Because when cynicism is in the house, I'm there for it.
Green Wednesday, that's my favorite. Right. Cheers, everybody. We'll speak to you next week. See you soon. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
That's all for this episode. But if you'd like to get your copy reviewed, or you've seen some copy you want Nick and Glenn's opinion on, get in touch at feedback@thefixcopywriting.com. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and share.